This is Rachel Jenkin here with Shelley Walchak, telling us about her experiences and memories with water.
Hey, Rachel. So I'm so pleased to be here. I was asked to do a presentation on my year of water, which was in 2013 when I quit a job and decided that I had to go fly fishing for a whole year. And of course, that took me to the side of rivers and lakes for a whole year, every single day. So, water to me has a special meaning in so many different ways. I grew up on the East Coast and swam in the ocean every summer and learned to body surf and just fell in love with being in the water. And then I kind of lived the middle section of my life in Michigan, surrounded by water everywhere. But first fell in love with Colorado when I was only 10 and came out to visit relatives and did a long-term horseback ride and realized that water was not as prevalent in the Southwest as it was where I grew up and had the middle years of my life. So as I thought about some of the things I wanted to talk about today, I was looking for a quote that would sum up really how I felt about water. But most of them seem rather trite, and I think that's because water is so basic to everything that we do in life, whether it be to just basically survive or to grow things or to recreate or whatever. But there's a quote by H. Auden that says, "Thousands have lived without love, but not one without water." So I really like that. And the other one that I looked at is, "Water is life's matter and matrix, mother and medium. There is no life without water." And I think that's so true that as a kid, you think of water only as a place to recreate. But as we get older, we realize as we try to grow our plants and as we use water for our household purposes, that this is a resource that we really have to take care of. I think it's difficult in this day and age where we have all this political infighting about environmental issues, and certainly out here in the West, this is such a real issue. Every day I open up the newspaper and I find articles about a town in California that's going to lose their water, about Lake Mead and Lake Powell and what's going on down there. So to me, at being older, I fear for the generations that come. I can't imagine not having access to water in my lifetime, but I sure don't know what's going to be happening in the next 50 or 100 years. So that's kind of the worrisome side of what I think about water. But to talk a little bit more about the 52 Rivers experience that I had back in 2013 is what I'd like to just mention a little bit now. What happened there was I had been working in a high-powered job and my husband and I decided to go off fly fishing for the weekend up in Montana. And it was during that weekend that I fell in love with fly fishing like I fell in love with young men when I was, 17 and 18 years old. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, I was in my early 60s and I was like, how can I make up for all this lost time of not being on the river? And so I worked for the next year. I think this happened in 2011. I worked for the next year to figure out a way to quit my job, buy a camper, and get on the road for a whole year. And being a librarian, I researched it and figured out which rivers I wanted to fish, and I ended up in the 7 Rocky Mountain states. So not all in the complete Southwest, because I was up in Idaho and Montana, but a great deal of my experiences for that year were in Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. And every day, like I mentioned, was a day on the water. And some days it was beautiful, some days it was raining, some days it was 0 degrees, and some days it was 95 degrees. But the water provided for me a peacefulness, and it also made me aware of life that I hadn't really understood before. As a previous birder, I became aware of these amazing creatures that fly around us every day by putting a pair of binoculars on them and really studying ornithology. Well, this year of 52 rivers, I don't know if I made it clear, a river a week, so 52 weeks, 52 rivers. But I learned to read a river. I learned to think like a fish. Where would be a good place to hold up? Where would be a good place to get food? Where would I be safe from the predators, both human and natural? And just a real respect for everything about water. I came to understand about the biomass and how some rivers were friendly toward bugs and insects, and how others weren't. And you could cast your line, 100 times and not come upon a fish because there's nothing there to feed the fish, so they're not going to hang out there. So it was an amazing year to gain respect for water and love for water. And in fact, it had such an impact on me that 5 years later, my husband and I sold our place in Durango and moved to the Los Pinos River in the Bayfield area. And we now, every day, get to look out and listen and watch what's going on in the river. One of the great experiences we had at our house was that a deer had died upstream, and the carcass had floated down and gotten caught in the weir outside of our house. And so all winter long, we had eagles and magpies and all kinds of wildlife feeding on this deer that had gotten caught in the weir. The river was so low at that point that any animal could cross the river. So it was just great to see the role that water and of course in this case this deer played in the wildlife's lives.
So then, in your travels of the Rocky Mountain states with the water, did you notice a big difference from the northern ones to the southern ones? Like you said, like reading the rivers and the things that inhabit it and everything?
Yes, so definitely, like Montana, I don't think has the same issues that the Southwest does, because the Colorado feeds so many of the, and I'm going to forget the name of the lower basin, because the Colorado feeds so many of the lower basin states, and we have such growth in California and Phoenix area. Though the Colorado is really being taxed in a way that it can't continue to supply the needs of the not only the people who are currently benefiting from that resource, but all the new building, et cetera, that's going on. Idaho and Montana were they were still affected because there was another big drought the year that 2013 that I went fly fishing, and it hardly rained that entire summer. So we kind of went from winter, we had a month of spring, and then we had like 5 months of drought. And so many of the rivers that I fished, one that I'm thinking of specifically was the Littlewood, because my son had come out to fish with me, and we had a real difficult time. There were no runs to be had. There were basically only holes in that river, and that's actually the same as the river that I live on, because they stop. It's a river that's fed by a reservoir. So once the water gets cut off from the reservoir, the river almost dries up completely. So yeah, big difference between the northern states' water situation and the Southwest for sure.